Good morning. Had a few technical difficulties. Just going to try to set a timer as we're building an audience this January 6th of 2017. I actually did this once before. Hi, Lauren. How are you today? I'm so glad you're with me. Give that pretty baby girl a hug and a kiss for me. Hi, Leanne. Hi, Linda. Oh, I like this much better. I don't know what I did earlier that I recorded and then it wasn't on. Or hi, Brenda. Hi, Dawn. Anyway, I went through a whole recording and tried to do YouTube Live and Facebook Live, and it didn't happen. So here we are again. So maybe I'll do a better job this time anyway. So January 6, 2017, and it's powerful. There's so much power packed into these readings that I may have to stop and then come back a couple of times today and record some little blips because it's just, man, today is a day where you really, really have to read. And this is how we read. This is to get God to speak to us. You know, I can't even imagine how the world has all changed when God inspired man through his Holy Spirit. He breathed his Holy Spirit into man and had them pen this Bible for us. It's powerful, but it's not just a book, and we don't worship a book. You're going to hear me say that a lot. We don't worship a book. We worship the living God. But what happens if we just read this with our intellect, if we just use our physical eyes and we read it, we're reading historical text. And that's not what we want. And that's not what I try to do every single morning. Now, I'm telling you, there's some mornings I wake up that I read with my physical eyes and I just read historical text. It's still truth. But what I want to encourage you to do is to pray before you start your reading each morning and say, God, make this real to me. Let it be my spiritual eyes that's reading this, so that you hear with your spiritual ears and you absorb it with the mind of Christ, which is in your spirit man. Christ-centered, you're Christ-centered, the Christ in you is reading the words on this, and they come alive. And when they do, I mean, today, I'm just telling you, we don't have enough time for me literally in one setting to go through everything that I think God wants us to get. And I'm going to do my best today to go back to this reading and reread and meditate on some of it, because it's just so powerful. There's so many things in it, between Genesis chapter 13 and 15, Matthew chapter 5, just verses 27 through 28, and the Psalms and the Proverbs today. I'm just telling you, it's power-packed today. And so I'm going to start right off. Abram took his nephew with him, Lot, when he decided to obey God, when God told him to go. Now, you know, it's hard for us today to just pack everything up and go. How hard was it back then? I mean, there was no electricity. They didn't get to jump into their Suburban and load all of their stuff and take a trailer behind and take all of the luxuries and the comforts that they knew. I mean, they just literally had to pick up their staff, the rod that they used, and take their livestock, enough for them to live, and just head out. And God told him to go and to leave everything that was familiar to him. Everything. To leave everything that was familiar to him. And when he went, he took his nephew Lot with him. And they set out into a foreign land, all because Abram heard the voice of God. Now, you want to talk about faith. God is laying a foundation for us by having us read Genesis first, Matthew in the New Testament. There is a foundation being laid for us. And the foundation is that Abram, who later became Abraham, is the father of our faith. I mean, what faith did it take for him to just pick up and go, not knowing what was out there. I mean, they hadn't even explored the land. There wasn't enough people to explore. He's going into unknown territory. You know, we as Americans, oftentimes through our American history classes and stuff that we take a little journey through what it must have been like to be Christopher Columbus and to set out, or what it was like to be the pioneers that set out on the East Coast and then to make the trek across America going west and settling the land. You know, oftentimes I look at the mountains and I think, how did they get across that with covered wagons? Well, you know what? Abram and Lot didn't even have a covered wagon. And you want to talk about faith. The faith it took to just go because God said to go. I mean, you don't want to know what we say? I mean, we get told in our spirit, man, we know God is saying, let's go to this Bible college. Let's go and change jobs and do this. And how much arguing do we do? Well, God, I can't go to Bible college. I haven't sold my house. I don't have a job there, or to change jobs. Well, God, how am I going to pay my bills if I change jobs? I mean, we struggle with faith just on simple, ordinary things. What Abram and Lot did is beyond our understanding when you let this word become alive to us, and when you read this spirit to spirit, because this is spirit, and we're one. And that's what we're doing. So I'm just going to read, and then I'm going to cut it a little bit short this morning because I'm going to come back. There's about 6 different sections of this that I really, really, really would like for us to get into our spirit man. I want it in my spirit man. So I'm going to start off Genesis 13, verse 5. And Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, so that the land could not support both of them dwelling together. Now remember, Abram got his wealth at the time when he gave his wife Sarai to Pharaoh because he was afraid that they'd all kill him. Now here we are. Abram becomes Abraham, the father of our faith. I just went on and on about how much faith it took him to have to just go because God said go. But I've told you guys that one of the reasons why I love reading about Old Testament and the saints of the Old Testament is when I see their failures, when I see their weaknesses, it lets me know it's not just me. I so much just want to be His. I am His. And yet that little enemy's on my shoulder saying, well, yeah, but you know what you did wrong yesterday? Well, I mean, you should have. I mean, you know, one of the things I'm fighting right now is, Elizabeth, you ought to be reading a whole lot more. Elizabeth, here you are telling everybody else to read and you're not doing any extra studying on your own. Or, I mean, the list can just go on and on and on, let alone when I just all out fail in completely going against the righteousness in me. I mean, so we read about Abram, and Abram, who becomes Abraham, the father of our faith, gives his wife to Pharaoh because she's so beautiful. I mean, what a blessing from God. She's so beautiful that he knows that all of the men in this new territory that they're going into is going to want her so much that they'll kill him. Well, you know what? Abram had enough faith in God. When he heard from God to go, he went into this foreign land. And yet, where was his faith when he was afraid? He had fear that they would kill him because of the beauty of his wife. I mean, fear drove him to the point he gave away his wife to another man. Wow. Now, you know, and why is that important? And why does that speak to me? It speaks to me because I'm not the only one that has fear. I'm not the only one that fails. I'm not the only one that walks in deception at times. And when I walk against the true nature of the righteousness that's been imputed in me as a New Testament saint, then it can cause me to get into the ditch on that side of the road instead of staying on the narrow road. I can get into that ditch in guilt and condemnation. That's what I do to myself. God doesn't do it. And that's not where he wants us. So I read this and I'm encouraged that Abram got his wealth through what would be classified as a sin that he did. He gave his wife to another man to be his wife just to keep him from killing him. I mean, really. Do you see what? I mean, it really encourages me to see these awesome men of the Old Testament who are so close to God and they hear his voice so clearly, and to know they struggle in some of the same kind of ways that I struggle. Okay, so back to present day. See why I know I can't do this in one setting? This is powerful stuff. So here they are. They both now, as a result, have so much wealth. They are so blessed that their possessions were too great that they couldn't dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen. Now, it's a point here I want you to hear. The herdsmen of Lot and Abram had strife, not Abram and Lot. But the herdsmen had strife because there wasn't enough room for them all to dwell together. At that time, the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land as well. Then Abram said to Lot, I love this. Let there be no strife between you and me. Abram used his words and the power of those words to say, you know what, we're kinsmen. We're related. There should be no strife. And it certainly shouldn't be over materialistic things. I mean, Abram chose relationship over all other things. The relationship was more important than any job he had. The relationship was more important than any wealth he may have. The relationship was more important than any wealth he might get. The relationship was more important than being right. The relationship was more important than having justice in his way. I mean, I hope you get this. And the fact that he used his words to say, let there be no strife between us. That's powerful. How many of us take the time with our loved ones to actually say, you know what, there's not anything so important to come between us? How many of us say with our spouses that the D word won't be part of our vocabulary? That we'll never let divorce enter into our mindset between a husband and a wife. How many of us take the time to do that? Lot said, let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen. Now see, they set the example. They knew that their life would be the example for their herdsmen. They knew that these herdsmen was watching them and how they were going to handle this. So not only no strife between them, but also no strife between their people. For we are kinsmen. See, because we're relation. We're relation. We're blood relatives. We're brought together by God. Is not the whole land before you? And then this is Abram talking to Lot. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right. If you take the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus they separated from each other on good terms, because Abram gave him everything he wanted. He let him choose. It reminds me of being a little kid and being with my cousins or even my brothers and sisters, and we wanted a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and Mom knew that we couldn't eat all of it, so she made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for us, and then she cut it in half, or I cut it in half. Being the oldest, I was the oldest, I cut it in half, and she always let the other one choose. I'm the one that cut it, so she let the other one choose. And how many times did I get mad because they chose the big piece? I mean, that's how selfish we are. I got to make the cut, so Mom let them choose, and yet I still got mad, and I'm the one that made the cut. You getting what I'm saying? I mean, this is powerful stuff. Abram let him have it all. I mean, as far as the eye could see, the Jordan Valley was the luscious, the greenest. That's where the livestock was going to thrive the most. And not one ill word from Abram over Lot choosing it. And look what happened when he, with a good attitude, allowed Lot to take, he didn't say, now, well, Lot, look what you just did. I give you the opportunity to choose and you take the best. Well, way to go, Lot. I mean, you're just selfish. I mean, he didn't do any of that. He didn't do any of that. Is that where you are in your walk? Is that how you would respond if somebody took the best from you? Now look what happened. So Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the valley and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. And then verse 14, the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him. It makes it sound like it was just almost immediate. Lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. That includes where Lot's at. For all the land that you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever. Abram didn't even have any offspring at this point in time. That's going to be the rest of the story. But he didn't even have any kids, and yet here's the promise from God already. So he allowed Lot to take the best of the best. And what does God do? He comes back and he rewards him. Anything the enemy takes, anything the locust eats, God gives back to us 100-fold. If our attitude is right, if our heart is right, if we have faith, if we really trust that God is who he says he is. Abram trusted him enough to go and leave everything behind him. And yet he didn't quite trust him enough to think that he'd protect him from being killed because he had a beautiful wife. But then he trusted him enough that he let Lot take all of the choicest land, what looked like all of the wealth for now into the far distant future, because everything they had depended on their herds being able to thrive. And then immediately God comes back and says, well, let you look and see what I've done. I've given you everything you can see in every direction, not just for you, but for your offspring, his children. He didn't even have any children yet. And I'm going to stop with that today. I mean, at least at this point in time, I'll try to log back on. Hopefully you've subscribed to Facebook Live, and I'm going to get this YouTube Live worked out, but you've subscribed because there's more. And I'm going to go into more details later on today. I'll try to make it a point to have a little bit of time. It's a full day, but today was powerful in so many ways. But right, I mean, just we haven't gone through one page yet, and already God's pricked my heart about my selfishness. He's pricked my heart about my faith, about my lack of faith, about how he's still there even when I do fail, and that he never leaves us and he never forsakes us, and that I'm not the only one that we all struggle. We all have the same struggles. The enemy wants to separate us and he wants to isolate us. One of the greatest tools the enemy uses is isolation. He deceives us into believing that, well, I'm the only one with this problem. I'm the only one that's failed like that, or I'm the only one that my kids do that, or my grandkids behave. All of those kind of things. He deceives us when we allow it. But greater is he that's in us than he that's in the world. And we are New Testament saints, and we have his spirit living on the inside of us. We have an advantage that Abram didn't have. We have the living God living on the inside of us. So anyway, I will stop. I could just go on and on. Today's reading is so powerful. But I'll try to log back in and try to do a few extra little tidbits in today's reading. And I thank you guys for joining us, and I apologize that I had so many technical difficulties earlier, but you know what? I'm getting better and better with this technology, and you guys are just being so patient with me, and I love you for it. And I just love 2017 and the sense of anticipation and hope that we have, that we're God's, that we're his, and he is ours. I love you.